The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents Arguing with Folks You Mostly Agree With. Hope you're doing well. I argue with a lot of people, and I enjoy it. And some of my best friends and I disagree on various things. And the ones that we're actually able to have conversations and disagreement and still walk away, kind of liking each other and being friends and possibly changing each other's minds, those are some of the people that I value interacting with the most. Someone who is, obstinate or problematic and isn't likely to change their mind or wants to disregard you and dismiss you the instant there's anything more than like a trivial disagreement. That's very frustrating. I'm going to do something this may be a bad video, but I think it's a good one. I'm going to read you, sorry, I know how much some people hate being read to, an email exchange, and I'm going to be adding some notes in it because I had a disagreement with someone. Let's just pretend that they're a philosophy professor because that makes it more interesting. They made a comment in an email that was part of a group discussion. And their comment was that they have always regarded humanist manifestos as boilerplate and as an embarrassment. And that humanists should have a one-line creed, which is think for yourself. I read that, and as a humanist, I recently posted a video about, kind of what humanism means to me and the value of humanism. I read that and I'm like, I have my own issues with the various versions of the manifesto, but I don't consider them boilerplate and I don't consider them an embarrassment. I consider them sort of the best efforts of groups of thinkers trying to put together a manifesto at different points in time. So I wrote to this person privately rather than going just straight to the group. And I said, how does think for yourself represent humanism in any useful sense? Thinking for yourself, in the simplest sense, thinking for yourself is what the I did my own research folks do. It's also what the authors and signatories of the various manifestos have done. Thinking for yourself doesn't necessarily address what's best for humanity, which is what humanism is supposed to be about. It's not a path to truth or goodness. Thinking for yourself is how Candace Owens determined that dinosaurs are fake and gay and that the moon landing wasn't possible. Thinking together, I think, would be a better motto or slogan for humanism, although it's incomplete. Thinking together is how science attempts to diminish the impact of personal bias. It's how teams of people develop new innovations and establish think tanks. It's why the email group that we're both in is filled with many people and not just you. All this nonsense about mission creep is bad enough when people claim that atheist groups should only be focused on the God question and not on church-state separation or religious privilege or how it further marginalizes and harms groups of humans. But when that same sort of accusation is leveled at humanism, which is so much more than mere atheism, it starts to read as petty and confused. When humanism was boiled down to the think for yourself bumper sticker, it ceases to be anything that those of us who actually call ourselves humanists would recognize. So why not start a campaign to redefine the scope of all the other things that you're not involved with? But to call it boilerplate, really? I have objections to each of the manifestos, but accusing them of being boilerplate or an embarrassment because it goes beyond think for yourself, I just don't get that. It's like you missed the purpose of humanism. And to be fair, the individual in question replied and said, I think your rebuke is misguided. Thinking for yourself means not defaulting on your epistemic duties by mindless deference to creed or dogma. Thinking for oneself in no way endorses the current war on expertise, a la Tom Nichols, or the indication of truth with your gut feelings, your inner idiot, as Charles Pierce calls it. Thinking is thinking, not emoting. Of course, thinking is not solipsistic, but is guided by scientific consensus and disciplined by the canons of deductive and ampliative reasoning. Thinking for yourself is essentially participation in free inquiry. And free inquiry is, of course, the name of the humanist magazine published by the Center for Inquiry. My fundamental objection to the manifestos is that they smack of a creed. I'm pausing what this individual said because in my initial response, I pointed out that this seemed to be a little petty to suggest that it should only be think for yourself. And here we're getting to the crux of what this individual's problem is. So back to their response. Once again, my fundamental objection to the manifestos is that they smack of a creed. When I stopped being a Christian, I was no longer bound by a creed. I could think for myself. The injunction, think for yourself, essentially is the imperative to strive to be rational. Inquiry is indeed a collective communal activity. Science is done by scientific communities. However, rationality is a personal view as well as a communal achievement. As W.K. Clifford noted in his classic essay, The Ethics of Belief, we each have certain epistemic rights and duties. As I understand it, then, the imperative to think for yourself is essential for the humanist enterprise. Essential to humanism is the recognition of humans as rational agents. Indeed, that humans are rational agents is the basis of Kant's recognition of inherent human dignity. Being a rational agent means using your rational faculties to the best of your ability, and do not pawn your conscience to any creed. Thanks for the opportunity to expand a bit on these points. Your reaction seems somewhat intemperate to me, and I hope you are mollified. Well, I'm not mollified, because now we've got to what the crux is. It's an offhand remark to dismiss the humanist manifestos as boilerplate and embarrassment, when in reality what's going on here is they smack of a creed, and this individual doesn't want to be beholden to any creed other than their version of think for yourself. Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with think for yourself. It's just not complete enough to be humanism. And it irritated me that someone could dismiss all of the work that went into the manifestos as boilerplate and then offer a bumper sticker. So I quoted him where he said, my fundamental objection to the manifestos is that they smack of a creed. And I said, yes, they are explicitly that. Creeds aren't necessarily bad. Statements of values and goals can be and are good. You might as well say you rejected Christianity, not because you couldn't find truth, but because you don't like being told that you're wrong. And he replied, something I said seems to have struck a nerve. I don't understand the level of truculence. Pause. I basically agreed with him that this is a creed. That's what a manifesto is, to some extent, is a creed, and that creeds aren't bad. And you might as well say you rejected Christianity, not because you couldn't find truth, but because you don't like being told what to do. And now I'm hearing that my response had a high level of truculence. And he continues, I guess I will just drop it, since I would not want to get into a pointless spat that would alienate someone with whom I probably agree on most points. I'm going to pause here again, because the notion that the spat is pointless or that it's a waste of time to argue a fine point with someone that you largely agree with is, as I noted kind of at the beginning, strange to me. The people who I largely agree with are the ones that I'm most likely to be able to sort out a fine point with, because we have similar methods of evaluating claims. We have similar understandings, I would hope, of fallacious thinking and sound reasoning. But instead, when I push back on the fact that I don't want no creeds, and that this was being used as a justification to kind of shit on humanism, it was, well, I wouldn't want to have a pointless spat alienating with someone who I probably agree with. And I replied, and I said, you're unaware why dismissing humanist manifestos as embarrassing and boilerplate while suggesting it should be nothing more than a McNugget of unclear thought might strike a nerve? You're unaware of the constant armchair complaints of mission creep? Basically, I'm pointing out that people are constantly saying, oh, atheism shouldn't do more and humanism shouldn't be this because, oh, no, you guys are focused too much on queer rights or marginalized communities and people that are actually hurt by religion. And I continued by being snarky and said, maybe instead of merely dropping it because you think it's pointless, you could listen and learn, but you won't. So bummer, I've dropped it. And he replied, actually, I have learned something. you have convinced me that I have nothing at all to learn from you. So we went from, hey, I don't like the Humanist Manifesto because it's boilerplate, to, okay, really I don't like it because it smacks of a creed and I just don't want anything to do with creeds, to, wow, you're really truculent and you are suggesting that you've made assumptions about me and I have nothing to learn from you. And before I could reply, he thought better of that response and replied with, actually, let's not write each other off. I think we would do much better as allies than enemies. There are enough real enemies out there without internal strife among atheists. I think we have many common concerns and probably see eye to eye on the vast majority of points. I agree. I cannot apologize for saying that I regard the manifesto as boilerplate because that's how I honestly feel. I don't believe him, but cool. I do apologize for expressing my feeling as a sneer rather than as a rational statement. That was indeed wrong of me, and I can see why it'd be offensive. Okay, can we be friends? Tell you what, and then I'm going to skip some stuff because it would reveal who the individual is to somebody, even though most of you wouldn't know who they are. Essentially, he asked if I was interested in writing an essay on the subject for him to publish at somebody's blog. And none of these have any viewership, no reach. It wouldn't get much more eyes on it than the email we did. At this point, though, I'd already typed up a response, so here it is. I said, you, as a seeming knee-jerk response, decided that it would be pointless to discuss disagreement with someone you probably agree with on many, if not most things. You decided I'm not worth talking to, despite the considerable evidence that either of us is more likely to learn from someone we largely agree with, as opposed to those we disagree with. You were shitting on humanism with comments devoid of substance and closer to boilerplate than the thing you were objecting to as boilerplate, and then claim you didn't understand why there would be a reaction to this. You added more reactionary comments that you have nothing to learn from me. Cool. That's just as smug and misguided as your original remarks. And now you think we should be friends? You seem reactionary and snarky and smugly superior as fuck. I don't tend to desire friends that are like that, but I'm open to reconsidering. What would I likely get out of this friendship? Because right now it appears that you're suggesting I go write an essay for a blog. Instead, I'm planning on doing my essay in video form. Hi, this is it. On my own channel, and it's not going to be about the value of manifestos, as I've just released a video on the value of humanism in general. It's going to be about this email thread, though I won't be including your name. There was a quick back and forth about how he's not going to watch the video and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, if that's the way you need, that's what you need to do to pretend that you're the rational one. Okay, you can ignore it. And he goes, wow, you're the most total asshole I have encountered in a long time. Everything you say proves that you are an asshole and I am the rational one. You are blocked. Really? Hyperbole much? Everything I said proves that I'm the asshole and and that he's the rational one. Okay, so this is a video response. I don't know how many of you end up having interactions like this. I have some interactions like this. They tend to go better, most of them. But this is the video response, and I'm not naming their name. Most of you wouldn't know them even if I did. But the people we most agree with may be the best people to argue with. They may be a philosophy nerd, a philosophy professor, an epistemological geek, an apologist, a counter-apologist, anything. And if there's at least agreement on the foundations of thought and reason, then when you say, I don't like this because of this, and somebody says, that doesn't seem like the reason, you seem to just be kind of dumping on this when it's supposed to be about so much more. And you're like, yeah, well, I don't like creeds. You're not being the rational one. And when you dismiss the person who's trying to correct you as a big asshole that you're going to block, and you're the rational one, you kind of demonstrated that you're not. And this is somebody who generally, I would think, has a good understanding of logic and rational thought. But they've failed to free themselves from their "I don't want no creeds no more" baggage, such that they just want to trash talk anything that might vaguely remind them of their former religious views. This is the lasting harm done to a mind, even in the cases of those who escape religion in the broad sense. It would have been nice if we could have made some progress, but no matter how, it personally ends with myself and this individual. And I guess it's over. It's not like we'd ever met. But I'm going to continue to use lessons like this to help others better figure out how to argue, when to argue, and when it may be time to move on. I would rather do debates in churches in front of an audience of believers than online in front of an audience of atheists. The nice thing is that online gets you in front of believers and atheists. But if you said you're going to go do a debate in a venue, would you rather do it at the American Atheist Convention or at the Southern Baptist Convention? I'll debate at the Southern Baptist Convention for free, eagerly. It would be like Old Home Week, and I'd have a great opportunity to reach the people that I disagree with. But if I'm having a discussion on a fine point, if I'm having a minor point of disagreement with someone who I largely agree with, I want to have that argument, because if you're wrong, it feels just like you're right until you know you're wrong. And then how you deal with finding out that you're wrong is the real issue. Because when you find out you're wrong, you're in a great position to not continue being wrong. And while I appreciate that, he basically said, yeah, I was wrong to not make a rational statement, and I was snarky, and I apologize for that. I'm not looking for an apology. It's not like he offended me on a personal level and that an apology makes up for it. He's dismissing the real thought of people that did more than a bumper sticker and trying to replace it as a bumper sticker. And he's doing so by his own admission, because he don't want any more creeds. I don't need no more creeds. And I think that's not true. I think all of us, I think what he described was a creed, just a very tiny one that was incomplete and ill-formed. And I think if you took the think for yourself and described it in the way that he did when he tried to expand on it, I think you get closer and closer to the foundations of rational thought, but you don't necessarily get to humanism, because the key value of humanism is in recognizing that the goal is to make life and the world better for humans. And while rational thought is certainly a function of that, or a contributing element of that, so is empathy, so is integrity, and so is having values and a creed, even if the creed were to be no more creeds, no more gods, no masters. The sort of mottos that you live by get put together and grouped and classified into what could be viewed as a manifesto. It would be interesting to see this individual write what they think a humanist manifesto should look like without resorting to just a dismissive bumper sticker. Because if this person would value a different version of humanism, that's something that could be valuable to all of us humanists, because it could lead to the fourth manifesto. Because I'm not as fond of the third one as I am the second one. But that's the nice thing. We get to revise and learn and grow. So when you find yourself in an argument with somebody who's mischaracterizing you, who is, oh, you're terrible, you're reactionary, you're assuming, and then acknowledging that they are advocating for something irrationally, but they just can't stop, take a break. Maybe, even though I'm now supposedly blocked, maybe this individual and I will meet up someday at an atheist convention or in some other online forum beyond the email thread, and have a conversation about humanism that sorts out exactly why he started off so virulently anti-humanist and then backtracked and backtracked and sidetracked until he blamed me, when at no point did I do anything other than object to what he was saying and try to get agreement. But I was dismissed as somebody that he couldn't learn from. And since he won't watch this video, or so he says, I suppose he's right. See you next time. Bye-bye.